Davian, most of us don't really need half something we need. Davian, we don't really need this.
No.
We don't need
Don't
half
need
something,
this.
have something we
Don't
need.
need this.
Davian.
We don't need the microphone. We could yell.
Exactly.
Where's the bond? Okay. We're live.
We're live?
Live again?
Live again on this hot ass fucking day.
On this hot ass day. Today is the 8th.
Today is the 8th of July.
It's hot like smoking the 8th. Where is
You said what?
Said it's hot like smoking the 8th. Where is bond?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Remember when I used to smoke 8s and shit?
Mm-hmm. And the whole 1/8 and the whole backwood.
Yeah.
That's such a waste of weed.
Yeah.
But we back. Hold on. Let me turn this towards us so we can see what we doing. That way we can see ourselves. But we back at it.
Yeah.
July 8th. You know what's going on. It's me, was the cameraman, Randall in the building. We outside on Division Street. We actually outside of Urban Chaos, a little smoke shop.
And I've actually, shockingly enough, I've been in Jersey for years, and I never really noticed this block. Shockingly enough.
That's crazy.
Like, he got tight at me for not knowing this shit.
Yeah, you came here and you had your artwork in here at one point.
I did, but like that was years ago, and like I forgot about it because I haven't been here in like years.
Well, they were across the street on the other side of the street back then. So this is their new location over here to the right. It used to be over to the left. There's a lot of stuff on here on Division Street. I think I was telling you before about the we were talking before about like the gentrification and shit, and how there's like certain unnecessary stores that we don't necessarily need. Like that's a jerky store.
It's a jerky store.
It's a store that just sells jerky.
Right. But like I don't think that's what you really meant by like the gentrification shit. I think it's more of like the pushing like.
Well, that's like phase 3. That's like you know, stores tailored more for the new population that lives here.
A population just likes jerky.
Well, who you know just likes jerky, Randall?
I don't know any demographic that likes just jerky. Like the fuck? I don't know any demographic. Like what demographic actually eats jerky anyway?
White people.
I don't believe that.
Truckers. Truckers is a good
Dude, this is Somerville though. Like there's not many truckers around here.
You don't know that?
Davey, yes I do.
You don't know that?
Yes I do.
How do you know that? How do you know the demographic of people?
This is not trucker country, David.
You can't assume to know what the trucker country is.
Oh yes I can.
Like what do you imagine trucker country to look like? Are you imagining like a Ford F-150 or are you imagining like an 18-wheeler?
Ford F-150.
Okay, we're not talking about the same kind of trucker then, Randall. We're not talking about the same kind of trucker. That's where our confusion is at.
That's what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not talking about the same kind of trucker. I'm talking about like a cross country trucker.
Those probably don't exist around here.
They can live anywhere.
Yeah,
they live on the road half the time any damn way.
Yeah, but they're not going to be stopping in the middle of Division Street looking for jerky.
No, but they might live in Somerville.
That's a little wild, but either way,
you know,
that's a little wild.
I don't know where you think these demographics be living at, like, and I don't know. Down
south in the Bible Belt.
But you be acting like they don't live close. Like, you know how country Hillsborough is, bro?
Yeah, Davian, like it's country, Davian, but it's not like that country though. Like I'll be thinking country like niggas got like accents and
it's
shit.
Farm as fuck in Hillsborough. I'll tell you that.
It's fucking Hillsborough.
Where it's born. You want to take that shit to Flemington, Huntington Central type area?
Yeah, but those are farmlands too.
I know, Randall. They got country motherfuckers out here. That's what I'm saying. You can't just act like you know the demographic of people who live around you. There are country motherfuckers everywhere. You think you got to go to the down south just to get called a nigga?
I didn't say that, David. That's a little wild.
No, we're not necessarily. We didn't go onto the racist topic, but we're talking about country.
Right.
We're talking about country, and I feel like you associating country and trucker
with Hicks.
With Hicks, yes, exactly. And that's not the case.
That's not what it is at all.
That's not what it is at all.
Fair enough.
Anybody can drive a truck.
Right. Hey, yo, Davian, like, I actually thought of something more recently, Davian. Like, so I want to go into, like, a conversation about, like, wealth and, like, finances and shit.
Yeah.
So, Davian, like, there's been, like, a back and forth conversation for, like, I don't know, God knows how many years about, like, minimum wage. I thought about, like, this, Davian. Well, like, think about the idea of minimum wage. We're talking about, like, the government forcing a company or trying to meet the demand of poor people that can't even afford to live and buy groceries,
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to give them a minimum wage just to be able to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought to myself, like, that's stupid. How about instead of a minimum wage, we actually have a conversation that's controversial about a maximum wage, where it's like,
What the hell would a maximum wage be?
that's actually a good point. So the question, so I looked into that, and the idea of a maximum wage is actually not new. It actually was first talked about by the founding
I,
fathers and also
fuck,
by other
when them
people. But
explain it to me.
so a maximum wage is literally the idea that you cannot take home a certain amount of money, and then it even goes into a maximum net worth. You
I
can't.
can't take home a certain amount of
You
money.
legally would not be allowed to take home a certain amount of money or own a certain amount of assets that would generate like wealth, for example. So like, it's the
But
conversation.
what determines that? What factors determine that?
What do you mean?
What factors determine how much money I'm not allowed to take home?
It would depend on that's more of like an ethical and a moral conversation about whether or not like is it morally okay to be, for example, a billionaire and have hundreds of billions of dollars and own all the different assets, whatever it is, and there should be a cap on what you make, and then everything after that, whether it's your net worth or your net income, is taxed at almost 100%. So
Well,
whatever excess money is left over from whatever you earn per year is taxed almost to
well, that's
100%.
just putting a cap on money that already exists for everybody.
Right.
That wouldn't that
Not
wouldn't make any
not
difference.
necessarily.
That would put more limitations on people than anything.
But no, it would also put like a limitation on how much wealth and influence one person can actually get,
Hmm.
as well as also taking that money. If, for example, you trust the government, which I don't think anyone does at this point,
No.
potentially redistributing the money, not necessarily equally to everyone, but using it for more social welfare programs and stuff like that, like Medicare and Medicaid, and then other social incentives and stuff like that, as opposed to like just the government just taking it. So like that's where I thought about it. Where
So that would in turn mean a bigger, well, not necessarily a bigger um, influence on getting people to sign up for government programs, but it would also mean that it would also mean more input from the government
but it,
because they're the one the money is going back into them for them to do something with it.
but that would involve having competent people in government to actually use that funding like correctly, which is a back and forth debate of having the right balance between like a capitalist society where people can make money and innovate and take risks and compete competitively, but then also have a social safety net, like an actual genuine one, where nobody, whether you're rich, poor, you're the drunker down the street, is gonna fall, economically for whatever reason and be at a situation where they're starving. So that's where the argument is. Because I thought to myself, David,
But that and it's hard to change things into the ideas we see them in, because it's one thing if it started a certain way and then you just allowed it to go this way, then there wouldn't be any question on getting it started. But the fact is, people who we had to put into place to run these to officiate these government funding things are the same people who are billionaires who don't need to, who don't have this money.
well, not necessarily, David. It's more of like the government officials that are actually making these policies, as opposed to like the actual billionaires. Because the billionaires don't actually do that. They actually are the ones that just hoard the wealth, as opposed to anything else. That's the most common misconception that people don't really get, is that like they don't really actually do anything except buy politicians. They're not actually like, the thing is, Davian, like that money we just saw it with the big beautiful bill, where it's like they're just getting a tax cut. They're not using that to feed into the social welfare programs or whatever it is. So that's where I asked the question, where it's like, well, wait a minute, what is, people don't really understand the difference between like $1 million and a billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are people in the world that have hundreds of billions or tens of billions, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what do you realistically need that money for, outside of simply just buying politicians and buying up all of the properties and assets and doing and basically making it difficult for other
The
people and
light would
inflating
have to be
prices?
shifted in the eye towards the eyes. The light would have to be shifted towards the focus of the public, of the people. That's where it would have to go towards. 'Cause otherwise things are right now run off of consumerism, and that only brings things back to the billionaires.
No,
So
exactly, and that's part of the problem. Where like, and so people always talk about like the Nordic model, for example, where they have a capitalist society, but they have strong social safety nets, where it's not necessarily an incentive for people to just live off the government, but it's services that they can that benefits everyone, regardless of what financial class you're in.
I
That
just I just think there has to be more qualifications, or an understandable qualification on what what caps you at a certain amount? Like,
Well,
is it the
okay,
job that you work? I can understand if it's the job that you work, or because people make money from all different types of ways. What's like the only thing that makes it that's deferring Jeff Bezos from another small business owner is the amount of money that they're making.
right.
So it's like,
But then, so the question is, Davey, and it's more of like, so let me ask you this then. That's your argument. What would you say? Let's say, for example, like you go from you making $50,000 a year to making $100 million a year from whatever you do, whatever business. Where do you think the line is drawn? Where it's like, okay, 100, like where it's like, okay, you can tell yourself, I'm good. I
the
don't need any more money.
the other half of it is that is not is the other half of it that's messing things up is another part of the consumer ideology that everything is just raising in price. That's why we can't afford nothing any daggone way.
Right.
That's why the minimum wage keeps getting increased to support people, and then we can't support people on the minimum wage any damn way.
Yeah, but David, that's also because the fact of like we live in a monopoly where most of the billionaires own mostly everything, and that also plays a part in pricing going up. You know what I
I
mean?
understand.
So that's my whole point. So having a conversation about capping someone's income after a certain amount of money and using that to transition, because I see where you're coming from, Davian, but I think it's more from like a little bit of your cynicism of like trusting the government from getting that kind of money to actually using it properly.
That's the other half of the issue, Randall. That's
Right,
the other half of
right,
the issue.
right. So like for me, I thought to myself like, okay, if I was able to generate or be able to say or be able to, claim how much money I want from owning a business or doing whatever,
Hmm.
how much money would I realistically want to make per year where I would tell myself, you know what, I'm good. I don't need or want any more money for
I
myself.
think
And whatever
that's
money I get after my cap off,
if I were to put it under a number, the number would be finite. It wouldn't matter what you do as a profession. It would just be a finite number. I would say nobody makes six figures.
6 figures. So no one
Nobody
makes
makes
more than a million,
nobody more makes more than
$1 million a year.
is that what six figures is? Is six
Yeah,
figures
yeah, yeah.
$100,000?
No, 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 no. That's five.
It's five.
No, no, no. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, my bad. Let's see. I'm brain fart right now. No, 6 figures is more than 100 grand.
Yeah,
Davian,
100,
that's that.
100 grand is my cap.
I keep it a buck with
Nobody.
you, Davian. That's a little low.
It's a little low
That's a little low.
for
In a
everybody.
in a in a capitalist society, Davian, where we
I'm
were.
saying for
Where we.
everybody, Randall.
What you mean?
For everybody.
What you mean?
I'm saying it for everybody. When I'm saying it for everybody, I'm not. I'm sure. I might be low, talking from a capitalistic standpoint, but realistically, what do you need to survive in the fucking world?
Right, right. Well, okay, fair enough, Davian. So maybe it's me. I'm a little more generous for the most part. I actually said that my cap off,
People need to. People are. A lot of people are living above their means, Randall.
Davian. Most people do. Most people live above their means. Davian, most of us don't really need half stuff that we need. Davian, we don't really need this.
No,
We don't need
don't need this.
half stuff that we
Don't
need,
need this.
Davian.
We don't need the microphone. We could yell. What
Exactly.
is on?
So most of us can live above our means, but when we live in a country like America, where we have as much money as we do, I think there's a sensible argument to have a little bit more of a larger income per year you can take home, and that's where like okay,
I think
you're
there's
good.
a way to give everybody what they need to survive. That way, more money can be put into infrastructure,
And social
into
safety
into the
nets.
shit that we have going on. Exactly.
Right.
To
So,
protect the people. We're like we
but
gotta
that
we gotta keep everybody on the. It sounds a little um, socialist or communist, but it's a fine line.
well, no, Davey, I agree with you. Like, I'm not a capitalist, I'm not a communist or a socialist either. But like, I would say personally, with the amount of money that America generates per year, or let's say like I think like the net
Hmm.
worth of this country, I think somewhere in the trillions.
Hmm.
I would personally say, so you said 6 figures is the cap off when it comes to how much you make a year.
Yeah.
I disagree. I would actually raise it as high where once you reach this amount of money, you shouldn't be complaining anymore for any reason. For me, it's 10.
10 million.
Yeah. That's where it's like, okay, you don't need any more money than that. Like, what else do you need that for? Outside of like buying politicians and like buying a property that you have no business buying. You know what I mean? And like buying corporations
Mhm.
and pushing people out of like their homes or their communities because you want to build malls or some shit like
That's what I'm
that.
saying. There's certain luxuries in this world that would have to be stripped away. I would say.
And that's where I would disagree because like I feel as if like if you made 10 million, if you brought home like after taxes like 10 million a year or whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? You can do a number of different things. You can fly private jets every
Mhm.
now and again for vacation. You can go on vacation at least 4 times a year, whatever it is. you probably won't ever have to worry about bills, period, for any reason, as long as you don't buy a $20 million home or some shit like that, and you should be perfectly fine. Anything you make above that, I would probably say is like needs to be taxed at close to 100%. And then the maximum net worth, I would also agree that I don't think it makes any sense for any person or family to be worth more than $100 million. Because and the reason why I say that, Davian, is because most humans, Davian, don't even understand how much
They
six
don't.
figures is,
They don't know how
let,
much
let, let
money that
alone
is,
how
man.
much 100 million is in net worth, whether it's actual liquid cash or it's like assets or whatever it is. They don't comprehend like
No.
how much money that actually is. You can buy a private jet with that kind of money. So
Yes.
so like to like if I gave you $100 million and you told me that that's not enough for you and your families to have a net worth, I'd look at you and call you evil and a psychopath. Because like what else do you need more than 100
No, you
million
don't.
for?
Hoarding that much wealth is
You're
inhumane.
Yeah, like there's no reason for that. Like yes, people might say like, oh, you earned it, not necessarily, because to make that kind of money, you had a team of people
I
in sweatshops or in factories building that stuff for you.
I think there would have to be a reevaluation of um, market value prices in the society that we live in. Especially because we do a lot of importing from other countries.
We don't make stuff here anymore,
Yeah, we
so
don't make a lot of
that's
stuff
part of the
here.
problem.
So yeah.
So the pricing is very different. So that's part of the issue as well. Because believe it or not, like back in the golden age of America, like back in the 50s and 60s, the tax rate actually was about 90%. So people don't remember that, but it also played a factor too that like back in those days the demographics were like 89 to like 90% white. So that's probably why they don't want to share like what they have with us in terms of resources.
No.
That's part of the issue. But yeah, for me, Davian, like I actually was telling my coworker Jose that like if I owned a business, well, I do own a business, but if I, for example, was making $10 million a year, I would be the person where I would actually have like a legal written contract in that business that would actually stop me from taking home more than 10, because I personally feel like that would actually corrupt me. If I make more than 10 million, I actually can see and have access to it. I feel like it would just start to corrupt me more than
I
anything.
agree. I
So
think the corruption could start earlier than 10.
I would put a self-inflicted like limitation on like, okay, you're not getting more than this. That's it.
That's
You're not doing
reasonable.
shit.
That's a reasonable thought.
You know what I mean? And people might say like, oh, I'm a communist or I'm evil, or like I'm not. 'Cause I'm not for the state owning everything.
What am I gonna do? What am I gonna hoard it? And if I'm giving it away, would that make me a villain?
Right. It's literally like Davian, like it's almost like a squirrel or like a chipmunk stuffing like all his nuts in like a tree and like just not touching it for like God knows how many years. Like for what reason? You know what I mean? Other people could use a portion of it. You know what I'm saying? So like that's kind of where I raised that argument where yeah, like I think there should be a maximum income you make a year, but like obviously not it's like, oh, like you make 60 grand a year, that's the maximum. No, like I'm referring to like a certain amount of money that reaches a
Oh,
level
that you
of,
make over time.
well, no, like in a
You're
year. In a year's time, but like some people are making like $20 million a year, $50 million a year. Some are making even 100 million. It's like no, like
yeah.
after a certain amount, like you're good. You don't need anymore. If you really need, Davian, you can't look me in the face and tell me if I gave you a check for $20 million, you would say I want more. You're not gonna tell me that.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I
Know
mean,
what to
I
do
mean,
with it.
you could unless if you're a fucking psychopath, but whatever.
What am I gonna do with that?
Buy
What am I
buy
do
the
with
world.
World costs more than 20 million.
Well, when I meant by the world, I meant by politicians that can make laws that they'll shape your world for you.
Even they gonna ask for some more.
Exactly. So that's where the issue is. So that's where, yeah, I do think that there should be a cap on it, because like people, the thing about capitalism in this country is that I do think capitalism is no longer an economic system as it is more of a religion now, where it's like it's just people are just blind to it and they don't see any kind of flaws with it and it's perfect and it works all the time. But the problem is it doesn't work for everybody.
What else we putting caps on in this world?
What do you mean?
We putting caps on how much money people be making. What else we putting caps on? It gotta be regulations, man.
I don't.
What's we putting caps on?
Well, I mean, in terms of like putting a cap on something, I don't think there's really anything else you can put a cap on for the most part. Like
Well, what are we monitoring?
monitoring.
Yeah, we're trying to make. Well, not necessarily. I'm getting away from the original topic and trying to make more of I guess I'm talking more about like what we were talking about last week, like what a utopia actually looks like.
I mean, it would just be more social safety nets because, like, I'm someone
There's
that
a
is
lot of
for,
rules, and there's a lot of rules in a utopia. I'll tell you, and they all got to be followed.
yeah, and that's part of the problem because when you live in a country that, as diverse, both ethnically, racially, and religiously as America, it can be insanely difficult to have a utopia because there has to be a collective narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that like we have a number of different clashing religions in this
Mm-hmm.
country in general, it can be difficult for us to even have like a theological narrative for all of us to follow because we all
Mm-hmm.
don't pray to the same God
So give me your
or any God at all.
unpopular. What should we be regulating more? We just talked about the money. Talk about the money. Putting a regulation on the money because having obscene amount of wealth is unnecessary. What else should we be putting a cap on?
Hey, see, Damien, I don't think that that outside of that, Damien, I don't think there's a thing that we need to put a cap on as
Well,
well.
clearly we can't have a utopia with everybody acting like this, Randall.
Well, yeah, I get that, but then the question is that like, how do you actually do that without restricting people's freedom to actually live how they want to, outside of how much money they have? You know, that's the question. Because like, if I for
Mm-hmm.
example put a cap on religion, everyone and their grandmother's gonna get mad at me. Where it's like, you can't. Oh my God, what the fuck?
Sure.
God damn. Like you can't put a cap on people's religion because it's like that's when you're going to start
Mm-hmm.
intervening. Because if you put a cap on a religious practice, what's
Mm-hmm.
stopping a state body from going into a church or a mosque or whatever or synagogue and telling people that they can't actually pray to this particular god? You know
Sure.
what I mean? So
Sure.
that's more of like a personal belief system as opposed to like
Realistically, how
your
many people do you think could live in a utopia?
how many people like in terms of like a number.
Yeah, following underneath the same kind of instructions.
It is probably less than maybe like 20 million people. Yeah, it's less than 20 million people.
I
It
think
might even be
it's.
less than that.
I think it's. I think it's less than
It
1 million.
might only even be like five
I think it's less than one.
because humans are tribal creatures and we lived and we evolved in
Mm-hmm.
primarily small, tight knit communities of less than 200 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be very difficult for us to have a collective narrative with a population of over 300 million people. That's literally part of the reason why they want to get rid of all of the undesirable people in this country now
Sure.
because they want to go back to that collective narrative in America back in the 50s because it was a collective decoder ring. Everyone wore the same sort of faith or belief system,
Now
and the demographics were primarily white.
I'm posing a hypothetical, so I'm not beyond stepping on people's impeaching on people's rights right now.
Okay, okay,
I
okay.
want to make that clear. I'm not.
Uh,
I'm posing stepping on people's rights right now.
so
Like
so
if I
what's an
decided to
example
get
of that?
if I decided to get rid of like porn,
Okay.
what kind of effect would that have moving forward?
I mean, it wouldn't really do anything except necessarily upset like guys that want to watch it.
Okay.
Probably more than
Now
anything.
I
It's the
would.
same thing with like people not being allowed to buy cigarettes until they're 21 or
Okay.
whatever it
So
is.
now I get rid of stuff like Well, I mean, there's definitely arrays of porn, but now I'm going towards like kink shaming.
King shaming.
People who want to live, express themselves freely along those lines.
But what kind of kings are you referring to? So, like,
Let's.
because you can't just say like kings in general because that's a very subjective
Okay,
term.
it's a wide spectrum.
It's
It's
a
a wide
wide term.
spectrum. Let's go with BDSM.
BDSM. You see, Davian, the problem with that, Davian, is that you're now intervening with people's privacy and you're kind of barging into their
Sure,
homes
sure,
and
absolutely,
invading what they want to do.
sure.
It's literally back to the whole religion thing. Like, if a
Hmm.
person is not a Catholic or Christian in public, but they
Hmm.
are in their home, and you've outlawed Christianity,
Hmm.
how do you know for a fact that people are not practicing it behind closed doors the same way for example, the Germans hid the Jews sometimes?
Hmm.
You have to go into people's homes, invading their privacy to figure out whether they're doing it or not. So you would have to go door to door to find a Christian flag or a Christian cross and get
Yeah.
rid of it
It's
and
a real fine
and
line that's
persecute the people that are doing it.
it's a real fine line of being walked here to say for um, places to exist where you can kind of think freely,
Yeah,
and more so in contrast to places where it's
yeah.
like we're thinking for you.
Crazy. I know it.
Is there any? Is there a kind of like statistic that shows which one is more um not profitable, more I guess better for society?
To get rid of.
Yeah,
As far as
to
I
say that
know,
one is better
I
than
don't
the other.
believe I don't believe that there is, because at the end of the day, Davian, when things get legalized, I don't or get regulated, I
Mm.
don't think it's a matter of like whether it's legal or not. I think it's a matter of the ethical practices that are in
Mm.
a certain industry or business.
I can
And I
understand
and I
that, and I
also
think it's a part of our it's in our human natures to think for ourselves and
yeah.
almost kind of question
Yeah,
things
and
and
then also the
create
reality
anarchy.
of responsibility, because
Hmm.
like with freedom and choices, you have responsibility to make conscious choices. For
Hmm.
example, weed legalization, it's like Jesus Christ, did you see that?
Hmm.
Fucking lightning bolts across the
Yeah,
clouds,
man,
whatever.
it's outside the thing.
But so for example, like weed legalization and even alcohol legalization, it's like
Hmm.
we know that these substances are mind altering and body impairing. But the question is, do you outlaw it simply because of that, or do you outlaw it, or do you punish a person that's using it irresponsibly?
Hmm.
That's where the question is.
Right.
So, for example, like that's like a chef or like someone in the kitchen taking a chef knife,
Thank you.
and then they take the chef knife, but then they stab somebody with it. Is it the knife itself that needs to be outlawed, or is it the behavior with the knife that's the problem?
Hmm.
That's where it is. Like, you know what I mean? Because my coworker, my dumbass coworker, I fucking hate this guy, but whatever. Like he complains about the idea of like people using these substances, and it's a general stupid idea, and that there's no such thing as personal responsibility, or and it's like whatever. And it's like, dude, at the end of the day, people can do certain things, and regardless if it causes harm to them, there are limitations to how invasive you can be in their
Hmm.
life and tell them what they can and cannot do. Because if, for example, if I'm a Muslim and
Hmm.
you're a Jew or whatever it is, if my religion tells me that
Hmm.
you are the enemy of my faith,
Hmm.
what's stopping me from coming after you, telling because my God's telling me to
Okay.
persecute you?
Okay.
I have the right to come after you because my God tells me that you are a threat to my existence. You know what I mean?
So, because now I'm thinking about the idea of privacy and how that could be infringed upon.
Hmm.
Especially when we're talking about public places.
Because for example, like back to the whole making money thing, like
Hmm.
making money is not a private matter. It's actually a public matter. If you're making money, you're usually doing it through a business or doing it through some kind of practice
Hmm.
where other people are consuming your product or your
Unless you're money
service.
laundering.
Yeah, yeah,
Unless you're money
but you're still
laundering.
technically working with businesses or in malls where you're transferring money through those businesses. So
Mm.
you're still dealing with the public. So
Yes, to some extent.
money making is still a public
It
matter.
is a
So
public
you
matter.
know what I mean. Religion is not necessarily a public matter, because no one could know that like I'm a Christian, whatever it is, if I do it in my home and no one knows about
Hmm.
it outside of my actual family,
Hmm.
or the fact that I smoke weed. Like my coworker would complain to me about the whole smoking weed thing, and I told him like, dude, you don't know this, but like the amount of
I
times
would.
I've been to
Okay.
work high,
Hmm.
you wouldn't realize it because you can't see it from me.
Hmm.
But that's the same thing. If I go home and I smoke cannabis and I go to bed and I wake up sober the next day,
Hmm.
whose freedom did that infringe upon?
Hmm.
Outside of you thinking it's unsightly
Hmm.
or detestable or degenerate, it's not your business. It's the same. It's the same thing with people who are gay, for example. Like if you engage in gay sex, that's not really anyone's business except the people involved in it. You can think it's disgusting or degenerate, but it's not your concern.
So, is it fair enough? Is it fair to say that? Is it fair to say that because because I guess in the age of living in social media, how everything is shared,
Hmm.
there's so much public information on the internet. Um, how there might be a camera on every street corner.
Yeah.
Is it fair enough to say that um, our lives aren't as private as we make them to be?
Yeah,
Our privacy isn't as secure
but
as we
speak.
make it to be.
But speaking of surveillance, that's actually coming up anyway. So like that's not even a conversation.
Especially I'm thinking about when they're talking about China's um, u- using your data. when
Yeah.
you're on TikTok or whatever.
What America does that too.
Or yeah, I know. Or Apple is looking at your data, checking it from one app to the next app or whatever, something like that. Your privacy isn't really as sacred and secure as you think it is.
It's not anymore though. But that's the thing. But like
That would be the angle
but
I would go
privacy
to.
I
That
think
would
is
be my
also
angle.
but privacy is I think is also different than personal freedom as well.
Mm-hmm.
Personal freedom to do what you want, especially within your own little minor community of America,
Mm-hmm.
is your business, even if it's not necessarily done in private. Personal freedom to actually do what you want without limitations of other groups or even the state intervening on it, especially if you're not directly harming another group, like
Mm-hmm.
logically, because people will say that like it's a matter of harm.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, if you and I go to a cannabis expo and there's peace, there's no violence, no one gets hurt, and
Mm-hmm.
no one outside of our community actually gets hurt in the
Mm-hmm.
process, outside of a sense of moral disgust that they get
Mm-hmm.
from it, that's not a justifiable reason to make it illegal or illicit,
Mm-hmm.
because you might feel disgusted by it, and that might evolutionarily, trigger you to want to burn something that you're disgusted by,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it is not directly causing you harm.
Sure.
So it's not really your concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your business, for example. You know what I mean? I don't like religion, but at the end of the day, people can do it regardless of how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a right to say that because I feel disgusted at religious faith, I have a right to go into your church and criminalize everyone in there
Right.
for praying to a God that I don't believe in.
Okay. I can understand that.
Literally the same way a Muslim does that. If a Muslim who believes in Allah goes to a Christian church and believes in Christ.
Now, what if there were rules in what if there wow. Wow. Wow, okay. Okay. Now I'm just thinking about the fact that like freedom of expression covers a lot.
Mhm.
Freedom of expression covers a lot. And
Including how you dress.
yeah, and
Because Davian, the thing about freedom is that sometimes freedom can also mean discrimination as well.
mhm.
So like for example, like there was a story I think in Texas apparently where there was I think a Texas public school.
Mm.
It wasn't a private school, but this Texas public school I think suspended a student, a male, for having like painted nails or whatever it was. Now that isn't right because it's a public school, so it's publicly funded, so they don't
Mm.
have a right to kind of implement like you know
Right.
you know ideas that only they want. If it was a private school and they had to pay for it, they can have a code of
Sure.
conduct. You can't have painted nails. Men can't wear dresses or
Mhm.
skirts or whatever it is. You can't do these different things because we are a private school.
Mhm.
If you are a public school and a public funded school, you don't get to determine how anyone dresses or how anyone wears
Mhm.
or expresses themselves in any context, and that includes their clothing, their faith, their personal preferences, their sexual orientation, their race. You can't do any of those things.
Mhm.
But we live in a world right now where people are becoming more and more tribal. They want to be able to control how other tribes behave within their background, within their backyards. And that
Mhm.
isn't right. Because it just comes back down to like, would you want that to happen to you? Would you want your personal preferences or personal choices to be dictated or controlled by a different group of people that are not a part of your tribe?
I would start making privatize I would start monetizing privatization.
Monetizing privatization. Okay.
Because it would allow a more transparent idea of what the public actually looks like if everything was more allowed. I feel like, even though there's a freedom to expression, there is kind of a societal norm that is still upkept to a certain extent. And I feel like that may not um, always be a transparent view of the entire demographic that lives in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I
Because
would I
yeah,
would let people be free. I let people be free, and if you
yeah,
want to keep shit private, it's going to cost you some money now.
it's going to cost you some money, and that's actually a fair argument because that's the thing. America,
I guess it just goes with like how accessible information is and
right,
how freely we feel to expose ourselves
right,
nowadays.
and then also
Um,
expose things that we don't like,
or expose misinformation,
right,
whatever the case may be. So yeah, keeping shit private, Gate, gatekeeping,
right.
gatekeeping. We're gotta get back to gatekeeping. Word is bond. Gotta get back to gatekeeping.
But yeah, like, and that's one of the things that makes America both so difficult to kind of deal with, but also a unique place to live
Mm-hmm.
because of how ethnically homogenous and tribal human beings are. We tend to want to stay with people that look like us and
Mm-hmm.
believe things that we do. So living in a country like America that is a lot more diverse than it used to be is very difficult now, because now we're just fighting realistically on cultural differences
True.
and cultural preferences. And then also, as an evolved species, we evolved as prey animals. We're also debating back and forth as to what is actually harmful to us
Mm-hmm.
versus what is. And conservatives and liberals don't have the same perception as to what can harm us than
Now I
anything
don't.
else.
Um, Now I want to make a point that there's not everybody on this planet lives by the same means. I would say um, uh, hardship and oppression is still something that happens in certain places. Um, I forgot the bigger point I was trying to make, but
What do you mean? Like
um, I forget. Hold on.
the bigger point to be made in terms of like
What,
privatizing personal choice?
no. Well, what was the point you just said before I started talking? Because I'll be messing
The
myself
idea
up.
that that America is not really natural in terms of like being ethnically non-homogenous, and that everyone that we all don't have the same collective narratives. We all have to like learn how to deal with each other from different viewpoints of life. And in a country like as diverse as America, we can't really come to terms with the idea of a utopia, because there's potentially 330 million different utopian ideas,
Hmm.
because we're all technically Americans under one roof, but
Hmm.
ethnically and racially we're all we're
Yeah,
not the
yeah,
same, because we all come from different
understandable.
cultures. We're both Caribbean. I'm Latin
Hmm.
American as well, so our way of looking at things are a little bit different,
Yeah,
even just between the two of
it
us.
wouldn't. It would be hard to try to fit. Would you say 330 million?
Yeah,
It'd be hard to try to fit 330 million individuals who live in this country under one ideology of being American.
under one utopia, for
Yeah, under
example,
one
it would be very
utopian
difficult.
ideal.
Now there are some universals, but then there are also limitations to that. Like obviously, like most people, for example, are for like Medicare for all and everyone having health care. For the
Hmm.
most part, it's just more the billionaire minority class that doesn't want that, because they don't want to give up a portion of their money. Because we can do all those different things when it comes to healthcare, paid maternity leave, free bus and train services. We have the money in America to actually do that, but
Hmm.
we just don't want to, because Americans are in general poor and rich. They're just greedy,
Hmm.
and they just don't want to share it. Like
Hmm.
someone has to explain to me why. Like I've been in New York City for most of my life. Why, with all the tax money that goes to New York City and the government, why is the train and the bus system, for example, still fucking filthy and unsanitary? And that doesn't make any sense. And then on top of
No,
that,
you're absolutely right. Word
I
is
still
bond.
have to pay for it,
They just did away with the damn Metro card like a couple weeks ago.
which is stupid. Like, why do I have to do that? I don't get that. All that tax money, yet the buses, the public transportation systems still cost us money. I don't get that. Like, why can't we just take tax dollars from other places and use it to fund the actual buses? And then
Yeah.
on top of that, just keep the shit fucking clean. Like, you know what I'm saying? I understand it's a city area, but
Well,
it's like at
that's
the
you
same
have
time,
other issues that you're dealing with. You have a homeless issue that you're dealing with. So
right?
most people who, I mean, most of the reason why this shit be dirty is because you got homeless people living on the fucking train. Homeless people living on the damn
And
sleeping on the damn
we
bus.
have to address that. But it is also just simply like a lack of like wanting to maintain the sanitation of the actual transportation system.
Hmm.
That's just part of it as well. Like we're just kind of dirty like that. You know
We
what I
are.
mean?
These buses are kind of old. Most of what we have is old. We don't update stuff. We just
And,
like kind of recommission it.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like there's no updating. There's none of that shit. That's like part of the problem. You
Yeah.
know. So just gets annoying, because like we have the money in this country. We just don't
Hmm.
want to do it because
No, we like it's easier. Well, like I said, for the cheap stuff, it's easier to put a band-aid on it and keep it moving, type of thing. Or sometimes if they're asking us to fix it, it's better to just build a new one and hope somebody with some money buys it instead.
Right, because everything's up for sale now.
Instead of
So it's
fixing,
more of like having one
instead
person
of
just buy the stuff and
you see
update
all
it.
these, you see this street or whatever.
Yeah.
All of these places up top, you could live here. Whatever. These are all apartments up here, whatever. So what's going on, Mark? All of these spots up here are apartments or whatever. Now I don't know what they necessarily look like in here. Some might be really old and outdated, and some might be renovated.
Hmm.
Now I don't know how much they cost or the means that the means of people by which people live over here, but rather than just taking the time to update all the other stuff that they have, they can just build new shit over there across the street. Keep building and building and building it. Somebody gonna buy that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely how I grew up in New York, whatever it was, because like I used to live in an apartment building. There was like stores underneath my shit, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was. So yeah, I'm used to that lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. But I'd rather live on land, and I'd rather live on a place with a yard.
Land is good. A place with a yard is good.
Yeah.
You know, I do. You know, enough space to be comfortable, man.
Hmm. But then some people actually do mind living like this. Like they don't have a problem living in this kind of environment. They actually do want to have like a lot less to own and to maintain. Some
Mm-hmm.
people don't want lawns. Some people don't
Some
want
people don't want lawns.
yards.
They don't want to take care of it. Some people
They don't want lawns. They
like
don't want
having a
yards.
view from their place.
Yeah.
That's why they like apartments.
Yeah.
Some
It's
people
literally
like
why
having
people still live in New
limited
York City.
spaces.
Like New York City, you don't really have
Mhm.
much of a yard or land, but people like living there
Yeah.
because they're not really. There's a difference between
It
city
doesn't make
folks and country
sense why
folks.
you're paying out the ass for this little amount of space, but
I saw a video one time where it was a 425 square foot like apartment building. It was like basically just like one box. She paid like I think $1,800 for it.
it's crazy.
That's criminal.
It's crazy, Randall.
It's criminal.
Word is bond.
It's a tiny little box.
Her apartment is no bigger than like one of these squares.
Yeah,
Like
like that. That's ridiculous.
that's
but
fucking
but
crazy.
apparently it worked. Like she had like a nightstand. She had a bed along with like a top bunk or whatever it was, and then a bathroom. Like it was
Sure,
like
you
it
should
was a
see
small
some of these
sliver.
apartments, the smallest apartments they have in like other countries, like in Japan or some shit. Like they
Yeah.
be packed in there like sardines. Where's Vaughn?
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah,
it is crazy.
we gotta get an apartment, or we gotta get like a place to live, or whatever it is.
A space.
Yeah. Well, yo, Mike. So you remember Mike? So he's actually not around right now. He's actually in Colorado.
On the bus? Back on the bus?
He's on the bus.
Did he drive the bus out there?
Yeah, he's following his dream.
Word. As he
Yeah,
should.
I just texted him a couple of days ago. He's
As
doing
he
he's
should.
following his dream right now. He's in Colorado. He drove all the way to Colorado. I'm like,
I don't
bro,
blame
like
him.
that
Colorado
van idea was actually a smart idea, bro. Like
Smart
real talk.
investment. Word is bond.
Like he can go anywhere he needs to or whatever.
Nah, that's nice. That's nice. We'll
But
have
yeah.
to get him since he's away. We'll have to get him in on the show remote. or
Yeah,
something.
he'll be around in the next couple of months.
Word.
But like
Yeah.
he was doing some business shit in Colorado, like
We'll
talking
get him on the show.
talking to a bunch of artists and
Word
stuff like
is bond.
that. But yeah,
Good for Mike. Word is bond.
all right, so it's about to get ugly. So I think we're good.
Yeah, it's finna rain up this piece. You know, it's gonna rain all week. Little bit of this, a little bit of that.
And my
So tired of
my
this
birthday's
rain.
next week.
Yeah, man, it's exciting. Word is
Yeah,
bond.
29. I feel old.
29.
I feel old, Davian.
Yeah, it's gonna kick in, man.
I feel old.
It's kicking in, man. Word is bond. Old kicking like now. Don't wait till I get to 30. Word.
We getting
We'll
old
be
as shit.
back next week.
All right.
We'll cap your birthday and yeah, we'll keep it unpopular. You know how we do.
Right up.
Doses.